Joining me now, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, who is on the Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees. Senator Booker, thanks for coming to the Sunday Show.
Jonathan, thanks for having me. I couldn't turn down a request from a Jersey boy. Yes, I'm outing you. I know where you're from, man.
Not just a Jersey boy, born in Newark. You left that part out, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't know if you wanted it all exposed out there for the national public.
Well, Senator Booker, the president, as we've been talking about, ad-libbed the line the White House is now walking back. Quote, "For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power." This man being Vladimir Putin. But isn't the president saying the quiet part out loud?
Look, I mean, the totality of what the president's been doing is trying to stop that man's outrageous aggression against Ukraine. And he's been putting on really good global leadership, I think respected a lot, as I hear directly from ambassadors from multiple European countries, and unifying free democracy. So I think the president is making all the right moves. And I think his comment probably was a very visceral one, but not a call for a change in U.S. policy. We are definitely not looking for regime change in Russia.
President Zelensky continues his call for NATO air support, which President Biden and NATO countries continue to reject. Senator, what would be the tripwire for you to support direct NATO involvement against Russia in Ukraine?
Well, the President Zelensky is doing extraordinary work, and having been in now 2 different Zoom calls with him, addressing Congress in one and engaging Congress in another, he is putting on, I think, for so many of us around the planet, an extraordinary example of leadership. And he's right to call for all the help he thinks his nation needs. I do believe that we have put forth a tremendous amount of support, and we're continuing to do it, from humanitarian support to military support. And there's real questions about, especially now that Russia is faltering in their efforts, will they resort to chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, all of which would demand a response, not just from America, but from the larger coalition. So I think that this is an evolving picture. I do not want to be one of those leaders that's going to telegraph to Putin exactly what's going to happen. Let him know that there will be a response, and let him question what that will be.
One more question on Ukraine before we turn to the Supreme Court nomination hearings of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. On Friday, there was a lot of talk about the fact that Russian defense officials sort of were signaling a change in tactics, a change in strategy on the part of Russia, focusing on eastern Ukraine. And yet yesterday, as Jacob Soboroff reported yesterday and just, was giving us an update just a moment ago, there were Russian missile strikes just outside Lviv, Ukraine, in the western part of Ukraine. Should we take anything that the Russians are saying at face value?
No, we shouldn't. And remember, we're watching from one perspective. But as I've sat in classified briefings and talked to our military leadership, they have very good eyes on what's happening in the theater of war right now. And that's why what the support we're giving, from Stingers and Javelins to other critical technology, is really about winning this effort. So again, there'll be lots of conflicting reports. Often they say the first casualty of war is the truth. But I have a lot of confidence in the kind of military support, intelligence support that we are giving to the Ukrainians, as well as that are enabling NATO to prepare should some of the worst possible things happen.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Senator, why did you use your time at the mic to not just celebrate her, but give voice to the meaning of her elevation for African Americans?
Well, let's just first say that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was more than prepared for whatever they threw at her. And she put on, in my opinion, a master's class of grit and grace and endurance. She could have had a room, instead of 11 Republicans and 11 Democrats, she could have had a room of 22 of the most outrageous questioning Republicans, and she would have persevered and overcome. But as a guy sitting in that room, watching the energy shift the way they were shifting it, I just felt the truth of so many Americans that we were feeling, which is they are trying to take away the greatness of this moment, the historic nature of this moment, and besmirch someone who I think is unassailable. But frankly, I wanted to speak to her and the glory of this moment and the extraordinary accomplishment that she made just by being in that room.
you have a habit, which I think is, a senatorial habit of saying, my friends, usually about people on the other side of the aisle, my friend Lindsey Graham, my friend Ted Cruz, my friend. And yet they asked questions of Judge Jackson that were sort of beside the point when it comes to cases, when it comes to judicial philosophy. And it seemed to me I was watching two hearings in one. It was Judge Jackson's confirmation hearing, but why were your friends trying to relitigate the confirmation hearings of Justice Kavanaugh?
I mean, it wasn't even just that. I mean, some of my colleagues were going back to federal judge fights that go back almost 20 years. I was surprised. They mentioned one judge whose name I didn't recognize because I wasn't even the mayor of Newark yet, and Ossoff was probably still in high school. So there was a lot of grievance politics being aired there and a lot of buzzwords. What her leadership and ascendancy to the Supreme Court has to do with children's books and critical race theory. If you were playing bingo at home, Republican buzzword bingo, you would have been shouting out bingo every other senator because they were just going through the litany of grievances, and many of them were going through, as you said, sort of outrageous attacks. At the end of the day, though, this was about her, and they couldn't take away from it. This is about a moment where we have seen in America 115 Supreme Court justices in our history. 108 of them have been white men, which in many ways belies the truth that we have had generations of black women who are qualified to sit on that court. And here is a woman with unassailable qualifications. In fact, more, if you just look at clerking experience or judicial experience, more than most of the people on the Supreme Court now. She is someone that was and is unassailable. And I'm glad that I believe, what has been shining through despite their attempts to take her down.
Senator Booker, we're out of time, but I have to ask you this question. There was talk about the potential of Republicans boycotting the Judiciary Committee vote that would that would move Judge Jackson's nomination out of committee and onto the full floor vote. Are you concerned about that?
I'm always going to be concerned about those things, but at the same time, as much as we are trying to inflame partisan divides, there are people over there that I know I'm going to believe in them, that they're not going to drag us to that place. I'm going to be a prisoner of hope about this and try to work my relationships on the other side of the aisle, which I value a lot, to ensure it doesn't happen. And
will Judge Jackson get even one Republican vote?
Well, remember, she got Republican votes 3 times, especially the last time, just less than a year ago. She got 3 Republican votes to serve on what many people see as the second most powerful court in our land. So I hope that she will get some Republican support. She doesn't need it, but I really hope for the legitimacy of the court, in a sense, that she does get some Republican support.
Senator Cory Booker of the great state of New Jersey, thank you very much for coming to the Sunday Show.
Thank you.